Don't fall for the delusion that because you have surrendered your life to God, that everything is just going to be grand. Don't think that because God has saved you from the pit, the depths of hell, seems like, that things are just going to be great from here on out. In fact, that's one of the things that I often hear from people, and I sort of challenge them a little bit. I hear people, and maybe you've said this, I've said the same thing. We say things like, I just know if I keep making the right decision, everything's just going to work out. And I think to myself, no. Let's talk about what work out means. Because a lot of times we're thinking to ourselves, if I just keep making the right decision, everything's going to come to pass the way that I've planned it. Now, Jesus made all the right decisions, right? And where did he end up? On a cross. Meaning it wasn't easy for him. It didn't mean there was no suffering for him. It didn't mean that everything worked out the easiest and softest way. In fact, it was the exact opposite. It was a very difficult way. And so when we say, well, if I keep making the right decisions, everything is going to work out. Yeah, that's right. Everything is going to work out according to God's plan. Jesus tells us in John 16:33, he says, I have said these things to you. He's talking to his disciples, that in me you may have peace. And then he says, in the world you will have tribulation. You will have tribulation. Notice he doesn't say, there's a good possibility that maybe sometimes you might potentially experience some tribulation. He doesn't say, some of you might. He says, no, you will experience tribulation. He doesn't say, some of you, I see the way you're living. You're going to experience some tribulation. I mean, isn't that what we tend to think? We see somebody in tribulation, we see somebody in a storm, and we go, I don't know how well they've been living. So as to think that we can avoid it. We'll avoid it because we're smarter. We're better. I won't make those stupid mistakes like they made. I mean, that's really where our heart's at, right? Jesus saying, oh, no. Tribulation's coming. The storm of life is coming. But he doesn't end there, right? He says, but take heart. Literally, take courage. Have courage. Have confidence. Why? Because I've overcome the world. And so what that means, when Jesus says, "What? I've overcome even the worst of situations I find myself in because of my own decisions," it's only temporary. Jesus has overcome the world. He's overcome death. He's overcome hell. And so no matter what comes at me, it's only going to be temporary because eternally I'm with him. That no matter what comes at me, it can't stop me in what God's plan is for me. So notice Jesus says, if you take that, take heart. What does it mean to actually take heart? I think there's a few things about that storm. When that storm comes, when life comes, and it has its peaks and its valleys, if we're confident, meaning if we take heart in those moments, we can be just as confident in the storm of life, no matter what it is, than when we're on the mountaintop. So what does that actually mean to take heart in that? I think there's a few things. First of all, I think be warned that it's coming, right? Don't be real. Keep it real. Don't be foolish to think that. I think a lot of times some of the most difficult parts of a storm are when we act like we cannot believe that this is actually happening to us. So obviously there are storms where there's a ton of pain. There's a ton of hardship. There's things that we experience. We can't change that. Maybe it's sickness or whatever, just a divorce. There's parts of that are just really, really difficult to handle. But I think oftentimes we make it more difficult because we act like we didn't expect. We don't think that this should be happening. Why? Why would we think that we would be excluded from hardship happening in our lives? Or from a storm rising up, the waves rising up in our lives? I think how we respond to storms is often more debilitating, can be more debilitating. The fear that comes from a storm that produces out of us can actually be more debilitating than the storm itself. See, when they come, I'll tell you, something that'll really keep us afraid, keep us down, so to speak, are character defects. You know that? When a storm comes, Jesus is saying, man, that's a temporary thing. But it's the foolishness that I have when I respond to a storm. It's that pride in me when the storm comes that says, I don't need God. I don't need help. I've got that callousness in my heart that rises up, that thinks I don't need other people, I don't need God, I've got this, I'm going to manage my life. Man, now that can be debilitating. That is the very thing that'll take you down and keep you down, even after the storm has passed. And it's oftentimes storms, watch this, it's oftentimes storms that need to come into our lives to knock that character right out of us. Is it not true? When it's oftentimes we think we've got it all together, a storm comes, we begin to realize, I don't have it all together. I'm not nearly as powerful or as in control or as manageable as I thought. So be real, right? Be warned. The storm is coming. So begin to prepare yourself now, not in a frightened way, but it's what we begin to actually take into our heart in the confidence, knowing that God is with us, that I can get through it. No matter what life brings at me, if God is with me, then I'll get through it.